I'd like to call to order the October 19th regular meeting of Reclassification. Ashley, please take the roll. Here. 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 If you would all join me to stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point in the meeting, I would like to turn the meeting over to Mrs. Garvey to introduce our intermediate school student showcase.
Hi. So one of the things I love about tonight's presentation is we use a lot of acronyms. And if you're not in the field of education, it's kind of a hard time keeping up. So this one is about something you've probably heard of. It's PBIS, not PBS, so not Sesame Street. PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. What it is it's a systematic approach, a positive approach, in which teachers and staff at the intermediate school recognize and magnify positive behaviors and actions, rather than placing a focus on tasks that are off-task actions. So I think as a parent, I wanted to try to catch my kids doing something right and reinforce that instead of always saying, no, don't do that. And I feel like that's pretty much what this does. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Howell, the principal, to introduce the kids.
Good evening. First of all, thank you so much for having us and letting us come present to you tonight. Thank you to the Board of Education, Dr. Konzarski, Mrs. Brudno, for allowing us to be here. It's truly a pleasure. In a minute, I'm going to let the people who really matter come up here and talk, and that's our students. And everything that we do at the intermediate school always comes back to them. And that's kind of how we landed last spring on this whole idea of taking what we traditionally think about behavior and flipping it upside down on its head. And what I mean by that is not focusing on those outlier negative behaviors, but focusing on the positive. And you're going to see that in this presentation tonight from our kids. And I guess the data at the school speaks for itself. If it's indicative of, is this working or not? We're currently at a 26% decrease in behaviors compared to last year at this time. So it's a huge win so far. Hopefully we can continue that throughout the year. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Cece, our student council leader.
Well, Mrs. McNamara and I are your student council advisors for this year, and we're really excited to have our 6th grade leaders of our student council present to you today about PBIS and CFIS.
Welcome. So you're trying new seats arrangement today. Some of us might have to move in order to be able to.
So this is the CFIS. I'm going to tell you about PBIS actually. What is positive behavior at CFIS? Responsible, having accountability to do the right thing. Safe, being and feeling protected from danger or harm. Respectful, feeling or showing consideration and care for someone or something. When students at CFIS show positive behavior by being responsible, safe, or respectful, they can earn Tiger tickets, Tiger tributes, or Tiger of the Month. One of the examples is Tiger tickets. When you earn a Tiger ticket, you have to be responsible, safe, or respectful. You can be recognized by any teacher or staff member. Come to the office and enter the drawing for a The bottom of the slip goes into the drawing box. Take the top of the slip home and share with your team. Mr. Howell draws 3 winners for each grade level at the start of. Another way, and another thing you can get is Tiger Tribute. You can earn a Tiger Tribute by having a yet mindset. You can show perseverance, build character growth, show authentic kindness, and or building being a peer model. These postcards are mailed only to families. This is the Tiger of the Month Award. This is how you earn a Tiger of the Month. You can be nominated by a home teacher. Students who show being responsible, safe, and respectful in all classes. Students can continually try their best and continue to learn and grow. And now, our 6th grade student council leaders will be performing something for PBIS at CFIS.
Scene 1, the students will be demonstrating a way that you can earn a Tiger ticket here at CFIS.
You will see students earn a Tiger ticket. Birdie and Scarlett are walking in the halls, but Birdie is having a little bit of trouble with someone. Mr. Kless is the teacher in the hallway with her.
Scene 2. A second way that you can earn a Tiger ticket here at CFIS, but there are many ways that the students earn their Tiger tickets.
Later that day, Matilda earned a Tiger ticket for being respectful in the hallway on the way back from recess. Dr. Guile is the teacher in the hallway.
Scene 3. The students will show how they celebrate their Tiger tickets.
After Scarlett and Matilda turn their Tiger tickets to the office, it's time to head home. The 2 sisters show their parents why they earned a Tiger ticket that day.
Scene 4. This is how we at CFIS celebrate Tiger tickets.
It's Monday morning, and Mrs. Detweiler is going to announce the Tiger ticket raffle. Let's see who wins this week.
Those are just a couple ways that the students earn Tiger tickets, but the students can also earn Tiger tributes. And our Tiger tributes are postcards that are sent home from a teacher weekly.
So we have some Tiger tributes for our Board of Education members and Dr. Pensarski and Mrs. Brudno for this evening to thank you for all of your time and effort for serving on the Board of Education, and everything that you do for us here in Sugar and Falls. So thank you so much. And that is the wrap on our end for our presentation on PBIS.
It's obviously working. Thanks for coming to visit us. You guys did a great job.
Still, at one point, there was some sort of word for like, behavior that we didn't want to reinforce. It wasn't a blur, but it was a.
Like off task.
Yeah, we have a thing called a spleen.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
No,
It's just,
it's just all positive.
yeah.
I love that. Great. All right, well, we are gonna continue on with our meeting, which is gonna go probably way past when you would want to have dinner and do your homework. So we'll pause for a few minutes and give you guys time to leave. But thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's very rewarding for us to hear from you what you're working on and to see some of the things that you're doing to make our schools better. And tonight was a perfect example.
And thank you for these. This is really.
I move to approve the minutes from the September 22nd, September 7th, and September 21st. Sorry, September 2nd, September 7th, and September 21st meetings. Can I have a second?
No second.
Any comments? Ashley, please take the roll.
Real quick, who was the second? I can't see you guys. Sorry.
Okay, Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yep.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Next up, we have the district advisory reports. We'll start off with agenda 2.01, strategic planning committee. Lauren, would you please provide an update?
The strategic coordination team, that's what I'm doing, right? Are you doing another one? We're talking about, or just SCT?
Just the
Okay.
SAT.
So the SCT is like the leadership team for strategic planning. We met on October 12th. We started by all discussing what we are most passionate about in this process, and also had brief updates from all three of the inquiry teams, some of which have had their first meeting and some of which were just had it on the schedule. We watched a bit of a TED Talk by Todd Rose called The Myth of Average, which I thought was really interesting, and discussed we did a SWOT analysis on that concept, the concept of a jagged profile and teaching to the margins and stuff like that. And we also spoke about our value-driven mission and vision, reviewed the inquiry group goals and deadlines, and then we finished up by analyzing some of the comments from the district leadership team in each of our strategic coordination areas, and did sort of high-level coding of that data and starting to analyze the theme in that data in the same way that our inquiry teams are going to do.
Any questions? Nope. Moving on to capital planning, which Lauren is also providing an update on.
We got a project update on the projects for summer 2022, the largest of which was HVAC improvements at the 7 through 12 campus. We also had a 5-year paving project, and the scope of that was included to add some drainage projects. Did some maintenance and removal of some of the low masonry walls and the outdoor areas around the 7 through 12 campus in preparation for revamping of some of those. There was roofing at the 7 through 12 campus, some work on a fire alarm system, bus purchases, and then a couple of smaller dollar things. And we talked about upcoming projects for 2023, many of which are along those same veins. There's further HVAC improvements planned. The transportation facility, which I'll talk about a little more in a minute. Further paving and work on the outdoor learning areas. An upgrade to the district phone system, bus purchases, and then additional safety and security focused improvements, some of which are supplemented by grant funds. We also got an update on the transportation facility from Ryan Schmidt. He showed us sort of detailed designs on that, which will be added to a later meeting for all of us to get the details of what those designs look like. And we also heard from Sarah Reed, who talked about space constraints at Gurney, which are pretty serious. And we talked about both the long-term plan for that and addressing it in the near term as well.
You mentioned outdoor spaces. Are there multiple?
Yeah,
buildings?
so it's all on the 7 through 12 campus. Like, for instance, they removed the low masonry wall that was outside the pack because maintaining that was costing a lot of money and it probably wasn't going to factor into the design we eventually have for that space. There are other ones that we're just maintaining.
That's thorough.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? No. Lori will provide a policy update.
Sorry, I had one.
Sorry.
Can you give a brief update on the buses, or maybe Mr. Wifter can? I know that at Meet the Trucks, we had a school bus with the new stop cameras. Did you guys talk about like how many buses have been
Chris would
equipped
probably be able to
with?
speak to that better.
It's okay, Chris, I can follow up with you later, but since we had it out with the community, we had the bus out with the community so they could see how how that captures a photograph, right, of a speeding car. So my understanding is we have a number of buses, a handful of buses now that have that technology, and we're looking at expanding. Is that correct? I could probably hear you from there. Sorry. Could you even hear me? No. Okay. I'll follow up. We're just talking about the cameras on the stop sign. Yeah. Could you just give us a quick update on how many buses have that? Okay. 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 Yeah. Thank you very much. That's okay. Now I know I thought I was talking too loud with this, but evidently you can't hear me, so.
And I will provide an intercouncil and senior council meeting, which is 2 different groups. Senior council met last week and it was fantastic. It's the first real breakfast that we've had with the senior council since pre-COVID. And what I mean by that is they were invited to preview a dress rehearsal for an earlier show, but
it was still COVID and they had to take their food to go. So this was very welcoming. It was just a lovely event. We had a good turnout and we actually had some people who volunteered to help us grow our reach for the next one. Mrs. Hainish and her team came with most of the cast of Annie and performed for the group. And that was just spectacular. It was wonderful to see the kids. You know, they always light up the room. So it was great. That was a great meeting. The intercouncil met today and Mike Doherty walked them through the website and the app. And that was also fantastic because he was able to answer smaller questions about the functioning of the app, which I know the people in that room will help push out. And so as people get more familiar with it, I think the functionality of the app will be even more helpful for them. And let's see, we went around the table and everyone gave updates, all the support organizations. I'll just give you a quick overview so that you're in the loop. Safe Routes had their first walk to school morning and afternoon on the same day event since pre-COVID. And they were a little worried that they might not get the turnout from the middle school that they've had in the past because it's been a long enough pause that there were no current middle schoolers who have actually participated in the event. But they apparently had a great turnout. It was a wonderful event. Lots of students participated, both at the intermediate school and the middle school. PTO is, let's see, their unfundraiser is coming up next. They just finished sloppy bowls at the middle school, which is again, something that hadn't been done in a few years and very well received. They're already planning it for next year. Boosters is working on the turkey trot, which is self-explanatory, but will be a race event on Thanksgiving that everyone is invited to participate in. The Ed Foundation is, their student group is doing boo baskets. So you can go on the website if you want and buy a $15 Halloween basket that the students are putting together. And I left my notes. There was something else. Ed Foundation, I know Ed Foundation is the boo baskets. Sorry.
They are with their student group.
Yeah, with their student group. What was the update from this week? Oh, no, the turkey trot. Sorry. The Ed Foundation also had another idea, which was a good idea, and the other support organizations seemed interested in joining in on, which was the process of how to make the grant request from a staff member to the support organizations. They felt could be better explained in terms of what kind of grants the groups are interested in and how you go about it. So they had suggested maybe someone making a video, and then people talked about maybe getting students engaged in making a video to share. And so I think there'll be more to come on that. Community education is in full swing with their fall programming. They're going to start doing evaluations at the end of classes to hear what people thought of them. And they're also interested in soliciting feedback on ideas of new things to offer that aren't currently offered. And the Alumni Association had a former, Ruth Kavanaugh was there, which is great, to represent the Alumni Association. It's the first time in a while that we've had someone other than Brian. We love Brian, but it was the first time to see a different face, so that was fun. And that was pretty much it from the intercouncil.
Quick policy update.
And did I skip over you?
Quick policy update. We've gone over process quite a bit, so I just want to tell you where we are as far as timeline. I'm going to try to bring, Neola's numbering is different than OSBA's, but the zeros are bylaws and the thousands are administrative issues. And I'm going to try to bring those to the work session. Any that need drafting, there are a few, mostly it's templates similar to OSBA, but there are a few, like, for example, board philosophy, that are going to require a little bit of drafting on all of our parts. So I will let you know in advance what those are going to be so we can be prepared. And then my hope is that we'd be able to do a vote on the first reading of those policies, of that first chunk at the following meeting. And we're meeting, what we're doing is we're trying to meet as a policy committee once a week to work through drafting. And we've just found that with us all sitting there and working, it's easier to determine who needs to give input on what pieces and to answer each other's questions and to look things up. So that seems to be where it's slow, but we're making progress and we're getting faster as we go because we're getting more comfortable with the software.
How many chunks do you believe you'll have?
I think for us, it really is those first two chunks. And then there's Ashley's chunk, which I think is one section essentially. And then unfortunately, a lot of this is really falling disproportionately on Pupil Services and Jen Benko. And so she's working her way through it, and where things need to be, we have a spreadsheet, and where things need to be sent out for different to different people to answer just different questions. I'll show you all that at the work session, but we're sending things out, making sure they come back in, getting that feedback incorporated. And we've kind of set up a process of what do we do when we have a question? Where does that go? How do we make sure we close the loop on the feedback? And then that'll all be, available for you to look at.
Great. Any other questions? Nope. All right, at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Jennifer for the superintendent's report.
Tonight, I have the district goal presentation, and I hope you'll accept me tonight to do the presentation. Usually Becky's here and we'll give you the entire update, but since our goals this year are linked so closely with strategic planning, I thought it made sense for me to come and to present this to you this evening. If you don't want to change your seats from the board perspective, this is in your online agenda. If you go down to file and to attachment, you can see what's behind you on the screen.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I didn't hear you. Where is it?
It should be under the, if you go to Superintendent's
Oh.
Reports, and then at the very bottom, there should be a file attachment. I just put it on prior
Got
to,
it. Okay. Got it.
and that way you don't have to move if you don't want to.
Perfect.
And Mike's going to help me, and I'll help you advance slides too, so then we can all advance together. So on the next slide, we need just to go through the strategic planning process. And this is a diagram that, if you remember, Denise created probably back in February, March, which walked us through all the different steps. And we are currently in stage 3. But just if we go back up to the very top to the beginning, our first stage was develop. And that was when we did the listen, learn questionnaire, that community survey. Denise came in, she went through all the data with us. I know Sharon and Lauren worked on that committee as well. And we came up with the strategic planning approach. We established some priority areas. And then we created a communication strategy with Charlene on how we were going to get information out to all the stakeholders. From there, we went to the discover stage. That was in the spring and summer of 2022. We did the community roundtables. If you remember back in May, we kind of put out those strategic focus areas. We said, are we right? Is this what we want to focus on? Did we understand that survey? And we took back all of that information. And from there, we established then the strategic coordination team, which Lauren presented the meeting minutes basically tonight. And we also then created inquiry teams, if you remember, back in August, and those were launched in September. In fact, the inquiry team training just happened here the end of September. So, and I thought that went really well as well. So that was kind of getting the discovery stage. And now we're in design. So what's happening right now, and Lauren talked about it from the strategic coordination team, those 3 inquiry teams are on their own in the sense that they have leadership. They're meeting, they're doing research on their topic. They're going to decide what qualitative and quantitative data they need to collect. So they're going to do focus groups. You're going to hear from inquiry teams. So they may want to do a focus group with people that are experts in this area, or they may want to do a parent focus group. They need more information about a certain topic or certain feedback that they got. And so they'll work on this for probably the next couple months. And eventually they'll put together a paper that has recommendations that will go back to the strategic coordination team. So I would say about February or March, they'll do some of those bigger community roundtables where the inquiry teams will put their information back out to the public again and say, did we get it right? What do you think? This is what we came up with. Give us feedback. And so they'll have time to tweak that. And that's all in this process. But right now we're on number 3, we're on design. So given that that's the direction, we're in a strategic planning year, the big question is, so what is the district doing? Is all we're doing strategic planning, or do we actually have goals and things that we're working on as a team, as a district leadership team in our classrooms and our buildings? And we do. So if you go to your next slide, which is slide 3, just to remind you, all of our district goals this year are actually linked and aligned to those 3 strategic priority focus areas. And I know you've seen these 100 times, but the high quality learning experience, the student staff well-being, and then the strategic resourcing. And then there's that overarching question for each one. If you want any of this information at all, and Mike even shared this today with InterCouncil, if you go to the main website page and you just search strategic plan, or it's on the left-hand side at the very bottom, all of this information, all of these documents, all of the minutes from meetings, everything is accessible there, and you can read and learn about any of these parts or components that we've been working on. If you'll advance your slide to slide 4. So this is our goal 1, and this is really focused on the high quality learning experience. And it just basically is that we're going to implement strategic academic initiatives that identify and refine common tier 1 instructional strategies and intervention supports to most appropriately meet the needs of K-12 students. Tier 1 instructional supports is that general classroom education. So the general, what goes on in the classroom. And when you think about intervention supports, sometimes we think of those are children or people that might be behind in a certain content, certain standard that we need some help with, but it can also be stretching. So it doesn't always have to be behind. It can also be ahead or need to be stretched. And so that's what we're focusing on this year. If you go to the next slide, slide 5, every goal has a key performance indicator. And the reason that we're focused on this at all grade levels, and every principal, all the classroom teachers are focusing on this, we want to collect data and our findings to help group 1 or inquiry team 1. So as educators, what are we seeing in the classroom? What are we seeing as our strengths and weaknesses? And so they are collecting that kind of information. They're looking at future fluencies in the learner. They're looking at what are our high quality learning experiences we're offering now? What could we elevate? What could we expand upon? The next slide is what I did for each one. This is just a highlight of, okay, what can I see? What can I touch? What will I be able, what will be my evidences this year that this is occurring? So some of the things would be, the first one would be those references or that research or that data that's going to that inquiry team 1. Number 2 that you might see or feel would be with our instructional coaches. You're probably aware that Chagrin has a math instructional coach and English language arts instructional coach. We've kind of refined their responsibilities this year and really intentionally worked with how can they support the teacher. And that's a little different approach than what we've had in the past. And COVID was a player in all of that because we didn't have the ability to put them in the classroom and supporting teachers and what the needs were. So that whole role of instructional coach is being refined and modified this year. We're also looking at our curriculum maps and current classroom practices. We just want to make sure that things are consistent and transparent in the same way. So when you're looking at the website and you're trying to find information, and then you're looking at ODE standards and you're trying to line things up and figure out where things are, and then you might have a syllabus, or you might have sometimes teachers send out like a weekly summary of what they're doing, or maybe a unit summary of what they're doing. We just want everything to line up and for people to be able to jigsaw pieces together. And so that's what we're kind of just auditing. How can we make that more connected, more transparent, and make it easier for everyone? And then the final thing under this category that we're really working on this year is the district leadership team, giving them voice. So last year when I came, the district leadership team was all administrators with basically 6 to 8 teachers. So our administrators were way heavier than our teachers. This year we're at 38 teachers and administrators. So our teachers outnumber our administrators, and they should. And so we're working to give teacher voice And what we heard from the teachers last year is that they wanted PD that was relevant and that they could really implement and use to enhance the work that they're doing with the students. And so Jared Mulliman, our Director of Student Advancement, has really taken the reins on professional development and working on what we need and getting that qualitative and quantitative data from staff to see how can we improve that and how can we tweak that. And I think that's going a lot better. The next slide would be goal 2. And this one would be, I just have to flip my page. This would be the strategic focus area on student and staff well-being. And this one is just talking about looking to assess our current programming, identifying areas of needs to support our students and staff mental, physical, emotional well-being, and supporting the work of Inquiry Group 2. So again, you'll see the similarities in the whole process as we go through. If you flip to slide 8, I'm sorry, this would be your performance indicator. Again, collecting that qualitative, that quantitative data and getting it to Inquiry Group 2. There's also some work with SEL programming and seeing what's working and looking at student and staff wellness programming and how we can better achieve our goal based on that information that we got from those community roundtables and those questionnaires. So what are you going to actually see in action this year as we're working through this goal to help support Inquiry Team 2? Some of the things is that similar to number 1, we're going to be auditing our curriculum. We're looking for gap analysis across grade levels. So some things just happen naturally at some grades and not at others. So where are those gaps? Programming and implementation of programming can sometimes be different. And a lot of the SEL programming are actually health standards. And our health teachers worked on that last year. So we need to go back and refine and see where those places overlap and we just need to do some editing, if you will. And I think that it's a good year to do and work on that as we're working through this with the Inquiry teams. We also, with number 2, and this is another Jared Mulliman piece, and Jen Banco as Director of People Services, they're holding monthly K-12 school counselor meetings. And so we just realized that there was never a time where they got to meet as counselors, and we got to develop our system and our thinking and our common vision and our core beliefs as counselors at Chagrin and what that really meant. And so they're working through that this year, as well as working with the student support teams. They're also, this is again, the review of the SEL related health mandates from ODE, that's the Ohio Department of Education. So for example, there's violence prevention, suicide prevention, making sure we're checking those boxes and that we have the best programming for our students and that it's implemented where it needs to be. They're also looking at assessing the current programming specifically with staff. So there are just some things that staff said that they would like to have or like to do when it comes to mental health and emotional well-being, that just some different kinds of things that we can do to bring about for their wellness and to get them information. And so we're just assessing the programming that's been done, and Marty is a key person and player in that with our wellness committee. So that's something you see. And then just the audit overall across all of the programming, that's number 5. If we flip to the next one, guess what? Let's see how this one links to strategic resourcing, right? So this group is going to collect data to give to the strategic resourcing Inquiry team. And it's basically your things like capital planning that we talked about tonight. And the big one here was communication. And so Mike is honestly one of the best leaders working on that project with the website, like what he did today, social media. How are we communicating? And then do our stakeholders know how to access that information? Because we have this great app, and I learned a lot today that I didn't know. So there's a lot that we can tweak and do, and that's where that two-way communication comes in with that goal. If you flip to the next one, our indicator is basically that we're going to document that data. We're going to compare, we have website data, we have communication data as far as access, how many people are, we called it Ways We Communicate. It was back from 2022, where we took all the different things we did, from those super newsletters to different constant contact emails, whether or not they were opened. So we can take all of that information and compare it to the changes that we're making now and say, how are we doing? And that's one way that we'll use, just to get some quantitative data on what we're doing. And then some of the highlights that you'll see, which is your next slide, which would be the release of the district website, which is done. And we're still communicating how to access and how to find and use that app. We also started, and I think this was Lauren was one of the leaders of this, the District Advisory Committee for Communication. If you're happy with the social media that the district has been putting out this year, and the face kind of that we've had for that story, Sharon and Lauren and that committee were key players in making that happen. And I think that that was a really good move, but that's something that you'll see. The other piece that you probably don't see, but has been professional development, is that we partnered with Patricia, I don't know how to say her name, Wensfeld, and she wrote a book, Closing the Loop, A Powerful Guide to School-Home Communication. We just wanted to make sure that the accurate story and communication was really happening between parents and teachers, parents and principals, and school and families, if you will. And so she's working with administrators. So to give you an example, when we have a letter that we're going to send home, we meet once a month, and she goes through those letters with us, and she helps us refine it and give it a district flavor as well as a personal flavor, so that we can have our building identity, but still have those district pieces. She helps us with language, so to make sure that it's like the readability level, and then also makes it, what I really appreciated about it, and this was just a Gurney letter that went out recently, we put many links, so that those parents that want to go deeper and want the information and want to do the reading and resources, it's because they're digital, we can embed all of that. So she's helping us learn how to make our communication stronger. And that's probably something behind the scenes that you might not be seeing. We also,
Quick question, Jennifer, is she with Charlene, or is that, okay?
and Charlene is the one that brought her to the group. We
Okay.
meet with her once a month for 90 minutes, and then any supports we need. The community, we did the roundtables. I think we've talked about those, the focus groups that the INCRE teams will do, capital planning meetings. There's pieces that we're working on with them that will be crucial to the strategic resourcing team. And then I know we've talked, I'm not sure at board meetings, but at many of the intercouncil meetings, things like that, those entrance and exit surveys, so that when students leave the district, we understand the qualitative reasons, so that we can start analyzing that. Is there a common theme? Is there something that we need to be aware of or need to do more investigation? And again, Director of Student Advancement, Jared Mullman, will be doing all of that work. But there's another component to that that's really crucial. That's the entrance survey. So why are you choosing Chagrin? Why did you come here? What was attractive? What can we enhance? And so I think that all that data is crucial for our staffing purposes, for how we plan for the future. Finally, this one might be a little different. We go back to that high quality learning experience. And this one is really just about, it's going to sound silly, and I'm going to really make this one simple. It's about ranking. I mean, if you just get right down to it, we get all of this data. We have all of these rankings, but sometimes we don't cross the two. We don't really investigate why we end up where we end up. And that sounds kind of silly, but it's just not something that we've really done an intentional dive into. And we don't have a process to review that information. Some of it is valid, some of it isn't, but it could help us. For example, making decisions with things about maybe AP and how we handle that, and how students are offered that. Maybe there are some other factors that we're not scoring high in that could be enhanced or brought up. Maybe some of those CCP classes or things could be an area that we're a little lower in, and it would be a real easy expansion and actually help our students perform better or be more prepared for some of the colleges that they want to pursue. Guess who's doing that work? Jared. But he's doing that with a team. So we're actually taking two approaches on this goal, and you can go ahead and flip to key performance because I'm kind of just talking now as I want. But you have the side of the report card. Let's look at the report card data. Let's figure out why we're landing where we land. Let's find what strengths we can find from it, what areas we need to elevate. And then let's look at the US News and World Report, because that's about the other major ranking that we have. Let's figure out how that one's broken down. And Lori was great. She got us a lot of the background information to how it was calculated. Let's just tear it apart and figure out why we're landing where we land, why are we scoring where we score. And then let's create a process for analyzing that every year, both of them, and then bring it together and combine it and say, is there something we can put to writing, something that we can put as the district process when we're analyzing data as it comes in? I just don't know that we have a systematic process. And so we want to look at both just to kind of, so we have a team doing report card and a team doing the US News and World Report, just to get a feel for data and how that works. So that's kind of what that goal 15 is. And let me just see if I missed any of the highlights for you, but I think.
My day today has been adding things to your plate. So you can take this one with a grain of salt, but is someone doing similar work with the PSAT and SAT
Not yet.
results? But I would just consider that as well, because I think that could give us additional information at younger grades too, that they'll, that scaffold up to the high school.
It might be interesting even in year 2 to pilot the process for analysis to see if it's really impactful. If it can be, because I really want something that we can use across different systems if it's done well. So that would be interesting. And we could even bring in then, like you said, probably Layla at that point in the middle school would be a great idea. The only other thing I see on here that I didn't discuss with you was the AP Collaborative 2.0, and that's just an opportunity that we have that AP teachers get to collaborate with teachers who, other high-performing districts who teach the same topic in the area. So they get together and talk about teaching this subject and what's the best practices, strategies, what resources are you using, how are you monitoring this? And so and Jared's been working with Becky on those pieces. So I think that's going really well. But I think everything else we've talked about. So any questions? I know I kind of gave you a lengthy one, but I thought we needed to kind of put the strategic plan and let you know we're actually doing something this year too and tie it all together.
And I was able to attend the DLT meeting where they split up by buildings and took the goals at a high level and then talked about really brainstorming things that they would like to explore further or contribute to the process. And it was fantastic to see so many teachers at the table, just having that time to communicate with the administration and what as well was, it's exciting. I'm excited for the goals and I'm excited for their participation in the process.
And we'll post all of this on the website. And then if you click on the goal in the presentation, it will take you to the actual action step document. We're still cleaning it up a little bit from the DLT meeting, but everything will be accessible.
There's a lot in it. Okay, anything else? Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Now is the time in our meeting for public participation. Is there anyone here that would like to speak tonight? All right, I will move on to consent agenda. Could I move to approve consent agenda items 5.01 through 5.09. Can I have a second?
No second.
Any comments, questions? Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Rhodes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Move to approve superintendent's recommendation 6.01 through 6.10. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Jennifer, would you like to walk us through these?
Sure. I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory, but just pull up a few. 6.02 credentialed evaluators. So for the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, or otherwise called OTES, And then OPES, which is the principal evaluation system, or OSES, which is the school counselor evaluation system, just to play alphabet soup with you tonight. You have to approve your evaluators. They go through a training and then they take a test that certifies them. So you're just approving those evaluators. Reclassification is just an increase due to additional coursework the teachers do. I think those you're familiar with. I'm just glancing at this 6.05, that's just the 6th class. That's part of the CFEA negotiated agreement. I think we had a few more that we found once we worked through the master schedule. That's what that is. Resignations, you're familiar with. It looks like 607 are your classified staff. These are a lot of the support aides and again, some food service pieces. And then I think we get into some of the next pieces would be additional hours. This would be for different kinds of professional development typically that people would do outside of the workday, or maybe different committees that they're serving on. I know intervention specialists have a special education team that meets with Jen Banco, and that's what those hours are for. And then you have classified personnel with additional hours. So I think that pretty much takes us through.
Any questions or comments? No. Ashley, can you take the roll?
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yeah.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Move to approve treasurer's recommendation 7.01 to 7.06.
I'll second.
Ashley, would you like to walk us through?
Absolutely. 7.02 is our employee insurance renewal. We met yesterday with the committee. I put the most important one first, but I'm going to talk about that one last. So the second line there you'll see is our medical mutual plan administration. That is for medical mutual to actually process all of our claims for us to administer the plan. So we are self-insured, but we still contract with them to do all the behind the scenes work. So that 1.7% increase results in about a $3,000 increase for us that is paid from the self-insurance fund. The stop loss insurance increase is 8.3%. That looks high when you see that number compared to the rest of these increases, but trend is more like 10 to 12. The industry right now, they're expecting, for example, medical mutual expects our claims to increase by 13% overall, and large claims are a huge part of that. We're seeing larger claims on the medical side and then the prescription side as well. Some of the specialty drugs are just resulting in really large claims. So we have not increased the stop loss amounts. So as costs go up, obviously we're going to hit those stop loss limits quicker. So they're going to be covering more for us. So that 8.3% results in $44,000 increase to us to the plan. So not from the general fund, but to the self-insurance fund. The dental, we're taking an increase of 3.78%. To put that in perspective, last year out of the general fund, we spent $170,000 on dental. So that's about a $6,400 increase covering our dental. And that 3.78% is shared with the employee as well. So they do pay their portion, we pay a portion, where both of those are going up 3.78%. Life insurance, we are locked in for another year at 0% increase. And then the Aetna Vision, we do not pay for that. The board does not contribute to that program. It's something that we offer, but the employee, if they choose to take it, pays the entire premium. But the premium on that is a 0% increase. Even if there was an increase, it would not increase cost to the board, but it would increase cost to the employee. So going back up to the first one, the medical prescription coverage, we're taking a 2% increase on our contributions. To put that into perspective, last year we spent about $3.2 million on
insurance, on medical insurance for our employees out of the general fund. Medical Mutual expects our claims projection, their claims projection for next year is that our claims are going to go up about 13%, 13.2 is what they provided us. If we were fully insured, had we not made the move to self-insurance, we'd be looking at a double-digit increase. So 2% is fantastic. I did some very quick math here on the $3.2 million. 2% obviously to us is a $64,000 increase. Had we taken a 13%, it would have been a $416,000 increase. So that's a savings about $350,000. That's 1 year. So clearly we made the right choice. And you know, it helps that we've had some good years. The last 2 years have, we've had good years. It's gonna happen at some point, we'll have a bad year, but that's why we're building up that reserve to cover that so that we don't come to a year where we have to take a giant increase. We're gonna kind of ride out these good years and take these small increases and build up our balance.
Actually, was a conversation around a point at which the reserve balance is accumulated enough that we then pull back? And how far are we on that from stop loss?
So that's how we do the calculation to determine the 2%. We have a healthy balance right now. We have about 1.5 million in there. And then what we do is we take those claims projections, give ourselves a cushion and say, if these claims that these experts think are going to happen, if that happens, what does that do to our fund? And we need to make sure that we're funding it enough to have all of that in there and then still have, you know, a little bit of a cushion. For the code, there's a code section 9.833, I believe, that requires us to have a certain dollar amount in there. So we always want to have at least that plus a cushion. And then, so the number is backed into, so there's a very technical accountant term right there. So we back into that number. But you know, we're always looking at that every year when we determine this. So it's not like we're going to hit a dollar amount and then stop.
Right.
I mean, we continue to contribute to it, but that's all considered when we, you know, determine to just take the 2% rather than some, I mean, because we do expect claims to go up.
Yeah.
I believe them when they say our claims will go up 13%. They're probably pretty close to being correct. But we don't need to increase our cost because we do have that cushion in there. Okay. Moving on to 7.03, this is the health equity contract. This is the company that holds our FSA independent care accounts. So we just have to sign a contract with them to manage that for us. 7.04 is disposal of district property. This is books and textbooks. The form says equipment just because that's our equipment disposal form. Both of those attachments there that you see are for the same disposal. We're disposing of textbooks. Those are items that you have already voted on the replacement textbooks. We're just getting them out of our buildings because we no longer need them.
Our intermediate school students here tonight have a lot of questions around the empty Dippin' Dots freezer and whether or not we should be considering disposal of it.
I will have that discussion with Marty. I will.
They would prefer to refill.
I was gonna say, I imagine that their questions were phrased a little differently.
So.
Okay.
Then they would like to.
Not have to look at it.
Yeah.
I get it. We will speak with Marty about that. Okay, so moving on to 7.05, the monthly financial reports. So on your agenda, you'll see the August and September reports. I'm not going to go through both sets because obviously the September is the more
Included.
recent. We'll go through those. And my computer went black. No, that's okay. It'll pop up. Okay, so first report is the new version of the SM2 report. That's our general fund summary report. I provided a couple graphs for you there just because we are at the end of the first quarter. And give me 1 second as I pull this up. Okay. First paragraph there, total revenue for the first quarter. My label got cut off in the general property taxes, but it's about 83% right now. That's a little high, only because we're only 3 months into the year, and we just collected all of our property taxes for for the fall. We'll get more in the spring, of course, but right now we're done. So that number is a little high. 83% is not where we're gonna land. Second pie graph there is total expenditures for the first quarter. Looks pretty similar to what we see all the time. Wages and benefits are our biggest expenditures. We know that. It's not too much to cover there. So moving on to the revenue report. Again, not a ton that I need to point out here. This all ties, if you look at each forecast line item there, that will tie back to your SM2 reports, just if you're interested in what it makes up those numbers. You've got some more detail there. So if you want to know what falls into restricted grants and aid, you can see all the different receipt items that get coded to that line. Same with operating revenue. There are a lot of different lines that go into the other category. So that's just details amount there for you. Moving on to the expenditure summary, again, still talking just about general fund. This chart here that I threw in here is only wages. So just because that is our largest expenditure category, we like to see that's kind of the biggest question that I get is where is all of that money going for wages? How are you spending it? How's it broken down? So you can see there, obviously regular instruction is our largest, special instruction next, and then on down through administration, maintenance and custodial and all the other things that we do to keep the lights on and keep the district running. Okay. Moving on to the comparison reports. So top portion of that, you're looking at revenue. You can see our revenue is increasing. You can see the highest number there in September for this year compared to the previous 4 years. That's because if you look at August, it was lower. That was just timing of property tax settlements coming in. We get property tax settlements from Cuyahoga and Geauga, and they don't always come at the same time every year. So you see some fluctuation there. But if you look over to the fiscal year to date comparison, it doesn't look quite as different. It's increasing, but the fluctuations there are not nearly as large as they are month to month.
Can you remind me what happened in 2021?
In 20.
Year-to-date comparison.
Geauga, probably looking. Yeah, collection. Geauga may not have come in. Geauga is typically later. Oh, but October would have been higher. I honestly don't know. I'll have to look. It could also be the homestead rollback because those do not come in consistently at the same time. For example, this year I got Cuyahoga's in September, but it did not receive Geauga's. Last year it was vice versa. It was the opposite.
Because it seems, I mean, the line, the slope makes sense except for 2020.
Yeah, I'll look. That honestly could be a formula issue, but I will look into it. Expenditures are much flatter. You can see that we're much more consistent on how we spend our money just because taxes don't affect how we spend. Said that really wrong. It doesn't affect the pace at which we spend month to month. But if you do look at the fiscal year to date comparison there, I love that chart. I know it's really small, but I love that because it compares our expenditures to the past 4 years and it shows what we've done and the commitments that we made in 20 when we committed to cutting $1 million. You can see we've kept expenditures very flat in a time of where inflation has kind of taken off. Next report is just the cash fund balance. Obviously, we're at our highest point in September. We will start spending down now until we get our next round of property taxes in the spring, and then it'll go back up again. And you can see every year it's kind of moving along the same trend. Okay, moving on to the self-insurance fund. you can see that line there talks about or shows what I was talking about with the self-insurance fund. It has gone up to a healthy amount. We're at about 1.5 million. We expect that to climb slightly by the end of next year. But we wouldn't expect huge increases, and we, of course, do not expect it to go down, or else we would have taken a different increase other than the 2%. So really happy with how this has turned out for our district. Next report is the financial summary report. This is all funds. So down the left-hand side there is the fund listed. The third from the right is actually the cash balance. Last two columns take encumbrances into consideration. So I made those bold. Those negative numbers there, if you're looking at the unencumbered, the very last one, if you're looking at food service, that's pretty typical. We do supplement the food service fund with the general fund by the end of the year. If we need to transfer money to it, we do. Same with the 14 fund, that's the Rotary fund, that's the Excel Tech. So those invoices have gone out to the participating districts. As we receive those in, you'll see that negative balance go away. And then all of the 500 funds, those are all the federal grants. And I know I say the same thing every single month. Those are negative because we spend first, then we request the money from the feds, and then they give us the money.
Ashley, you just met with the healthcare committee, and I know that the quality of care provided was maintained at the excellent level that we've historically had. Are there any concerns? Or are they still generally happy with the switch to the self-insurance? Or any new information you have?
Yeah, switching to the self-insurance didn't change anything for our employees other than how it's funded, and they don't see that or touch that. The only thing that changed is they're seeing lower increases. So certainly they're happy with that if they realize it. There was that didn't affect the plan, the actual plan design. I haven't heard anything about plan design. We went through negotiations in the spring with OPSI, and I didn't really hear a whole lot of talk about plan design. From my perspective, I think everybody's happy, but.
Well, we have representation in the meeting, so.
Yeah.
Presumably you would hear.
You would hope. Next report is just the bank reconciliation for September. You can fly by that one, Mike. There's nothing really exciting there. Summary of where our money is. You can see 79%. We're still in Star, Ohio. That is still right now our best bang for our buck. 2.5 is actually looking pretty good compared to where we were for quite a long time. So I'm okay with that. And then the Red Tree report, which is where the $4 million in investments is, and those are all the individual securities that we're holding. Any questions on those? I tried to go quick. Sorry,
I think I probably do this at every meeting, but bravo, brava. I mean, it's beautifully organized. I love your color scheme. I love the charts tell me exactly what I want to know.
Good.
And so I just really appreciate that you take time to do this and walk us through it.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, 7.06 is the authorization to request tax advances. That is for next calendar year. So that's just authorizing me to request from the county, from the counties to participate in their advance programs. That's all I have for you. Recommending your approval.
Anything else from the board? Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other business they'd like to introduce? Seeing none, our next regular board meeting work session will be a work session on Wednesday, November 2nd at 5:30 in the Sands Community Room. For motion going through.
Got it. I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22 for the purpose of the consideration of the following matters: compensation of a public employee or official, conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros,
Deb?
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller, Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
And we will not take